Chapter 3257. 1 second remember love net. Providing you with wonderful reading. On top of the broken wall, a delicate and pretty girl in a fluttering blue dress is sitting lazily. The zither in front of her is casually plucked. Below her, in the corner of the wall, stood an apprehensive young man. He raises his head to look at the girl from time to time, and then looks at the building in front of him. He can't help but swallow. "Miss, do you really want to kill Lei Wudi?" But his cultivation has reached the peak of the mysterious life realm. No matter how powerful you are, it's impossible to win. However, he talks for a long time. The girl on top of him just stretches and says lightly, "You said before. How many points does Lei Wudi have?" Ma Quishan's face stiffens, his lips trembling. 63,600 points. TSK. Mu Yen can't help but frown. So low? Even if she kills him, she still needs more than 10,000 points to reach the top. While she is muttering, an angry shout suddenly comes from the front. Where did this stinking bitch come from? How dare she behave atrociously in my Leitang gang? Did that little bitch Lien Rue send you here? Hehe, your Shijiang you really thinks that you can strut around and be arrogant after suppressing our Leitang gang for the past few months. Someone suddenly exclaims halfway through the man's words. Hey, Yi Liangchen. She's Yi Liangchen. This shout makes everyone's eyes focus on the top of Mu Yan's head. Above her, the three words Yi Liangchen are clearly written, and there's a string of eye-catching tens of thousands of points. Who's Yi Liangchen? Idiot. Didn't you look at the carnage list these days? It only took a dozen days for a newcomer to appear in the top 200 of the carnage list. Even Lei Wudi's pupils constrict. He looks up and down at the girl on top of the wall. The girl is plainly dressed, with a plain appearance. She's wearing a coarse blue robe, and her face looks especially young and inexperienced. At first glance, you'd think that she's just a servant girl from some sect, or a servant girl from some sect. But this girl has a pair of extremely bewitching peach blossom eyes. Even if the soul-captivating brilliance was restrained, it was still bottomless and unforgettable. Lei Wudi couldn't help but despise Yap Liangchen for a second when he saw how average his appearance was. However, when he thought of this person's abilities and the small shock that his sudden appearance had brought to Tianguang ruins, he couldn't help but reveal a kind expression on his face. "Miss Yi, I've been very curious about you these past few days. Our Thunder Gang is thirsty for talent. I wonder if Miss Yi would be interested in working for our Thunder Gang? I guarantee that the treatment will definitely satisfy you." Mu Yen said with a smile that wasn't a smile. "Do you know what kind of treatment can satisfy me? How dare you open it so casually?" Hehe. Lei Wudi revealed a confident expression. "There's nothing I can't do in the Tianguang ruins. Miss Yi, just tell me about it." Mu Yen hooks up the corner of her lips. "If I say that I want to take the top of this round's carnage chart, can you do it for me?" Lei Wudi thought he had made a mistake. Behind him, after a moment of silence, a thunderous burst of mocking laughter rang out. "Is this woman crazy? She actually said that she wants to take the top of this round's carnage chart? Does she know how many points she has now? Haha. I heard that Yap Liangchen has just entered Tianguang ruins. I think he doesn't know the depth of Tianguang ruins at all. That's why he dares to boast so shamelessly. Mobile users, please browse and read." Chapter 3258. Lei Wudi couldn't help but sneer. "Miss Yi, I'm asking you to raise your salary, not to daydream." "How can it be daydreaming?" Mu Yen said unhurriedly. "After killing you, I'll only be 10,000 points away from the top of the Carnage leaderboard. There's still a day left. I'll pick a few Leitang gang members with relatively high points and kill them. Won't I reach the top?" Lei Wudi's breathing quickened, and he flew into a rage. "Bitch, I gave you face, and you don't want it. Letting you join the Thunderbolt gang is giving you face. Since you don't appreciate this gang leader's good intentions, then just wait to become a human sacrifice for my Leitang gang." Lei Wudi wanted to curse and threaten him again, but it was too late. Unexpectedly, in the next moment, he saw a flash of light in front of him. Suddenly, the sound of a zither rang out, accompanied by the whistling of a sharp sword light. Lei Wudi was shocked and thought to himself, so fast. However, he was a mysterious life-stage elite who had been on the battlefield for a long time after all, so he quickly calmed down. With a wave of his hand, a giant axe was already raised in mid-air. Boom! The sword and the axe clashed together, causing the earth to tremble. The house, which was already half destroyed, was on the verge of collapse. The onlookers from the Thunder Gang were also shocked. This Yi Liangchun seems to only be at the peak of the mortal cultivation realm. I didn't expect him to be on the same level as the sect leader. Hee. So what if I'm not at a disadvantage? Although everyone's cultivation was suppressed to the same realm in the Tianguang ruins, the strength of their spiritual senses was different. In a battle in the Skylight ruins, the strength of one's sea of consciousness was far more important than the power of one's techniques and divine abilities. With Leader's sea of consciousness at the peak of the profound life stage, you'll quickly exhaust Yi Liangchun's soul. At that time, let's see if she still has any ability to resist. The members of the Thunder Gang laughed heartily, not the slightest bit of panic or fear on their faces. Ma Quishan, who was hiding in the corner, was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. He wanted to stick his head out and look around, but he was afraid that he would be discovered. But in the end, he couldn't help but look out carefully. Could Miss win? That's impossible, right? That was the peak of the profound life realm. However, Miss had done many incredible things. Since ancient times, who could break the boundary of the shattered rock hill? Who could cure an abandoned Dantian? Perhaps Miss could really do it? Ma Qian thought to himself as he watched the battle between the two of them with worry and anticipation. However, with a single glance, Ma Quishan's eyes widened, and he nearly screamed out loud. What did he see? Beside the Thunder Gang members, there was a haggard man bound in chains. Who else could it be other than his father, Ma Huang'an? Father! Seeing Ma Huang, and Marqian could not hold it in any longer. He yelled and pounced forward. However, before he could even get close, he was sent flying by a ruthless kick. En-er! Ma Huang'an, who had a numb expression, saw his son and started to struggle. Release my son! Ma Huang'an roared. An heir? Why are you here? Ma Qin also wanted to ask why his father was in Thunderbolt Gang. But when she saw the chains on her father's body and the bone-deep wound, what else could she not understand? It turned out that he couldn't find his father anywhere in Tianguang ruins because he had been captured by the Leitang Gang. He was even treated as a human sacrifice. A foot stepped heavily on Ma Huang'an's head. Mocking laughter could be heard from the surroundings. Yo, are you looking for your father in Tianguang ruins? It's a pity that you're just a good-for-nothing. You don't even have a single point. Chapter 32:59. Ma Huang'an, you can actually see your son before you die. Surely you can rest in peace? Ha 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 ha. Ma Huang'an's eyes bulged out, his face ferocious. He roared hoarsely, "Let him go! If you dare touch my son, I won't let you go!" Ha ha ha, this waste is fish on our chopping board, and he dares to say he won't let us go. Whether I dare to touch your son or not, you'll soon see for yourself. The foot stepping on Ma Qian's head ruthlessly grinds, making him howl in pain. But soon he clenches his teeth. Raising his head, he glares at the crowd with bloodshot eyes. You won't be able to run wild for long. Our miss will soon kill Lei Wudi and become the top of the carnage list. Everyone was stunned by his resolute and decisive words, and then burst into even more unbridled mocking laughter. A mere mortal cultivator woman wants to kill our gang leader. You really know how to do it in broad daylight. Bang! Before they can finish, a figure suddenly flies over and heavily hits a high wall next to them. Gravel splashes and dust flutters. The crowd can't help but turn their heads to look. They see their gang leader, Lei Wudi, who ranks fourth on the carnage list, being squashed under the gravel, blood gushing from his mouth. The scene falls into a strange silence. The laughter of the Leitang Gang members, who were just stepping on Ma Qian's head, abruptly stops. All the arrogant and presumptuous expressions freeze on their faces. What did they just see? Why is the gang leader, who's called Wudi, lying on the ground in such a miserable and embarrassing position. And the woman they had looked down on just now was calmly walking towards them. Cough, cough, cough. Impossible. How is this possible? Cough, cough, cough. Lei Wuti vomits blood and screams hysterically. How can your divine sense not be exhausted? Aren't you at the mortal cultivator realm? How vast is your sea of knowledge? Mu Yen curls up her lips. Guess. Or, she pauses, the 7 absolute sword in her hand emitting a sparkling light. You can go to hell and ask King Yenluo. Lei Wuti's eyes widened in horror. No, you can't kill me. What's in it for you? I have many treasures outside, and I can give them all to you. Cough, cough, cough. Everything in Tianguang ruins is just an empty reputation. You'll be able to leave the carnage roll sooner or later, so why fight for first place? As long as you let me go, I can give you all the wealth I've accumulated over the years. Mu Yen, it sounds very tempting. Lei Wuti's face lit up and he was about to continue. He then heard the girl's clear and moving voice slowly say, Unfortunately, I must have the first place on the carnage list. Whoosh! The sword light whistled and pierced through Lei Wuti's chest. The 7 absolutes sword spun around and returned to Mu Yan's hand. She didn't even look at Lei Wuti's body and turned to look at Marquian. He couldn't help but frown. What are you doing out here? Marquand stared at her, forgetting to blink. No, although he had just said that the young miss would win. But he really didn't think that he would win so easily and quickly. What kind of monstrous master did he follow? After staring blankly for a long time, Marquand finally reacted to what Mu Yen had asked. Chapter 3260. Ma Qian hurriedly stuttered. I'm sorry, Mississippi. I saw my father and rushed out unknowingly. Huh? Mu Yen couldn't help but glance to the side and saw the skinny Ma Huangan. She couldn't help but be surprised. It turned out that Ma Qian's father had disappeared because he was captured by the Leitang gang and used as a human sacrifice. She nodded, yes. In this way, our mission is considered half completed. The two of them exchanged a few words. The Leitang gang's members woke up with a start. In a split second, horrified screams, angry curses, and people fleeing in panic filled the ruins. Don't come over! The people who had just unscrupulously humiliated Ma Qian and his son were now full of anger and fear. Their trembling hands held the long knife and pressed it against Ma Qian's neck. They screamed, "Put down the sword in your hand, or I will kill him." Mu Yen curled her lips and raised her hand. The 7 absolute swords disappeared. The Leitang gang's members breathed a long sigh of relief, their faces showing expressions of having survived a disaster. Fortunately, they still had hostages. Haha! Women are really soft-hearted. As long as they seized their weakness, they could turn defeat into victory. Lei Wuti was dead, and the Leitang gang would have to change its leader. Maybe one of them would be the next? As they were thinking about this, they suddenly heard the melodious sound of a zither. Then they felt their eyelids getting heavier and heavier. In the end, they lost consciousness and didn't know anything. The guilty expression on Ma Qian's face stiffened. He stood up in a trance. He saw Mu Yen drag the unconscious Leitang gang members over. They were lined up like radishes. Oh, this is a lot. This is too little. Including these few, it should be enough to top the carnage list, right? Ma Huangan staggered to his son's side and said absent-mindedly, Who is this girl? And why did you come to Tianguang ruins? Where's your mother? Ma Qian's eyes reddened as he recalled his mother, who had passed away long ago, and his own experiences all these years. But he quickly pulled himself together. Father, Miss is my savior. I will explain the specific situation to you after we leave Tianguang ruins. Ma Qian. He heard Mu Yan's voice halfway. Ma Qian immediately ran over. Miss, what can I do for you? Mayan points to the radishes she picked out. Interrogate them one by one to see if they've done anything outrageous. If he hadn't done it before, he could spare his life and just plunder the Void Jade Key. If they were really dregs, they would naturally become human sacrifices. Ma Qin nodded repeatedly. His eyes filled with worship as he looked at Mu Yen. Mu Yen glanced at Ma Huangan again, thought for a moment and said, Oh right, there should still be a lot of animals locked up in the Leitang gang. Go and release them. Ma Huangan's body trembled as he stared blankly at the girl. His eyes reddened. It was only at this moment that he realized that he was saved. The girl who had come with his son had killed Lei Wudi and given him a new life. He was no longer a human animal. He no longer had to be locked up in the dark underground of the Thunder Gang day after day. And those who were as unfortunate as him could also find relief. In front of the Heavenly Light Ruins Massacre list on the floating island. Many cultivators would often gather here to check on the changes in the rankings. Chapter 3261. These people were sent by the major forces to keep an eye on the situation. There were also those who wanted to know the changes in the rankings as soon as possible so that they could sell first-hand information. Of course, there were also those who were concerned about the change in their own names or just wanted to watch the show. At this time, Suda, Su-Er, and Su-San were also standing in front of the list, but their purpose seemed to be different from the others. Big brother, why are we wandering around here? The Carnage list hasn't been updated in a long time. Let's hurry up and find out more about Ma Huangan. Suda frowned and shook his head. He couldn't help but take another look at the Carnage list. Yi Liang Chen's name was still in the 190th place. At this time, there was only 1 day left until the end of the slaughter list. Su-Er, big brother, don't tell me you really believe that the Demoness can reach the top of the slaughter list in just 1 day? Haha, that's impossible. Su-San continued, that's the Thunder Gang we're talking about. The third largest force in Tianguang ruins. Lei Wudi is an expert at the peak of the profound life realm. The heroine must have been joking when she said that. Ah! Su-San's voice was interrupted by Suda's scream. Fuck 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 fuck. Look! Su-Er and Su-San raised their heads and looked at the same time. They subconsciously looked for the location of the 190 Yap Liangchen. But no. No more than 190. 150? None. There were none in the 90s. Su-Er and Su-San raised their heads higher and higher, their expressions becoming more and more shocked. Then, in the list of the top 10 that was shining with dazzling light, they saw a familiar name in the 9th place, Yap Liangchen. Lei Wudi, who had been in 4th place, had disappeared. Su-Er and Su-San felt their vision blur. Their bodies swayed, and they almost fainted. Holy shit! What did they see? Did Yap Liangchen rise from rank 100 to rank 9? But Lei Wudi had fallen off the list. What did this mean? Did Yap really kill Lei Wudi? In front of the slaughter list, the others quickly discovered the changes on the list. Then, as if water had been poured into a pot of hot oil, the entire square boiled over. Yap Liangchen. Yap Liangchen again. How is it possible that she is ranked 9th? Who is this Yap Liangchen? Before this, no one has ever charged into the top 10 right after entering the slaughter list. Suda chuckled. He looked at the excited crowd as if he was looking at a bunch of fools. Everyone was drunk, but I was sober. Idiot. Top 10 is nothing. What the heroine wanted was the top spot on the Carnage ranking. No, this deity could no longer be described as a heroine. She should be called Almighty, right? Guru Yi. Previously, he doubted God Ye's strength because he was stupid and ignorant. However, he now knew that there was nothing in this world that Almighty Yi could not do. In the next 2 hours, Yap Liangchen rose from the 9th place to the 7th place. In the 6th hour, Yap Liangchen had risen to the 4th place from the 7th place. In the evening, Yap Liangchen was ranked 2nd. He was only 1,000 points away from Fu Yizue, who was in 1st place. More and more people gathered in front of the slaughter list. Everyone was talking about the name Yi Liangchen. Some of them were shocked, some were jealous, and some were angry and doubtful. But more people were in high spirits, waiting for the moment when a miracle would happen. Can Yi Liangchen really make it to the top of the slaughter ranking as a newbie? Chapter 3262. Only 1,000 points. With the speed at which this god is accumulating points, 1,000 points is nothing. But at this moment, Fu Yizue's points increased by 9,000 points. Suddenly, the gap between the two increased by another 10,000 points. Fu Izue also wants to maintain his first place. God Fu has been first 5 times. Isn't it natural for him to be first? That's right. Yap Liangchen is nothing. A newbie wants to challenge Cabinet Master Fu's position? Does he deserve it? The crowd was divided into 2 groups. Some felt that Yap Liangchen would become the new leader. Some felt that Fu Izue would keep his position. Time passed and it was almost noon. In another 15 minutes, the Carnage leaderboard would be cleared. However, Yi Liangchen's points had never increased since then. Many people who supported Yap Liangchen shook their heads. Fu Izue's supporter was arrogant. Cabinet Master Fu didn't increase his points because he didn't want to bother with a small fry. Do you really think that Yap Liangchen can compete with Cabinet Master Fu? As he spoke, he patted the leaderboard. Look, the leaderboard is about to be updated. Everyone, who do you think will be first this round? Cabinet Master Fu. Cabinet Master Fu. Yap Liangchen is nothing. How can he compete with Cabinet Master Fu? Amidst the hustle and bustle, a red light lit up on the Carnage leaderboard and it started to flicker. Everyone knew that it was a countdown to the leaderboard's update. Once the red light stopped flickering, the 1,000 Carnage heroes would be decided. There were already people counting down excitedly. 9, 8, 7, 6. Su-san couldn't help but let out a long sigh as he sat on the ground. Just a little bit more. What a pity. Su-er said. God Yi is already very powerful. Can a normal person get second place when he just entered the Carnage leaderboard? Only Suda opened his eyes wide and stared at the leaderboard. 3, 2, 1. As expected, our Cabinet Master Fu is still first. Is this human nature? Suda's pupils shrank involuntarily. The red light flashed for the last time. Why did he seem to see the name at the top change a little? Was it an illusion? Ding dong. At the same time, above everyone, in the sky of the entire Tianguang ruins, a dull mechanical voice sounded. Tianguang Ruins World of Slaughter announcement. Yi Liangchen is ranked first on the slaughter leaderboard in the 34th round of the Guayu period with 94,200 points. Yi Liangchen, please come to the slaughter list to get the 34th order of Guayu as soon as possible. No one could hear what he said next. Everyone in the square felt a buzzing sound in their heads. They could hardly believe their ears. What did they hear? Yap Liangchen was at the top of the slaughter list? How was this possible? In the Thunder Gang, which was already in a mess, Mu Yen activated the floating light jade key. When she saw the announcement on it, she couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. The 34th order of Guayu? What is 34? A special symbol representing 34? She vaguely felt that she had seen a similar symbol somewhere before. Forget it. Let's not care about this for now. In short, by a hair's breadth, he had finally reached the top of the slaughter list. Chapter 3263. Looking at the members of the Leitang gang kneeling on the ground and crying for their parents, their faces covered in snot and tears, Mayan couldn't help curling her lips. In order to survive, these people were just short of telling her all the good things they had done when they were 3 years old and wearing diapers, just so that they wouldn't be defined as human animals who deserved to be killed for their crimes. If it weren't for the fact that there wasn't enough time, she really would have gone to the jungle to continue killing wild beasts. Great God Yi, you are our savior. Please accept our worship. This Leitang gang is gone. Great God Yi, why don't you occupy it and become king? Let's form a new force and guarantee that we can beat the other forces. No way. Don't tell me you want to create another one on the floating island? The mutated Tianguang ruins had existed for so many years, plus there was a 10-to-1 time blessing. Why hadn't anyone been able to reach the top of the list 12 times in a row after so long? No, there must be a lot of hidden worries. She glanced at the people kneeling down below and said unhurriedly, "Fine. Then let's form a force." They weren't just grateful. Even Ma Qian couldn't help but say excitedly, "Miss, what's the name of our force? Will the Yi family help us?" Everyone. Several days later, in the floating island of Carefree City, Originally, it was just a simple and crude, casually built city lord's residence. At this time, Wei Mian was standing on a tall building, looking down at the people coming and going. Beside him, the scholar Zhou Zixuan let out a long sigh of relief. Recently, we've only been able to exchange the cloud bones for some supplies by selling them to the nearby Jade Sea City. But if this goes on, we won't be able to hold on sooner or later. The population of Carefree City was still a little too small, and the prosperity of the town needed ordinary people to fill it up. Chapter 3264. Look, more and more unaffiliated cultivators are coming to Liberty City to settle down. Isn't it all for the sake of training in the Six Stars Pagoda? The chaotic tower was left in the Phoenix Mountain Range. Instead, part of the control of the primordial tower had been assigned to Yan Haoyan, Ru Yan, Feng Haitang, Bai Chen, and Chu Tianyu. Before she went to the dark Parasol Desert, Mu Yan had left the Six Stars Pagoda in Liberty City and given Wei Mian part of the control. She also released the news that there were top training magical equipment in Liberty City. At first, there were only a few unaffiliated cultivators who decided to check it out since they were passing by. They were reluctant to leave at all. They were unaffiliated cultivators in the first place. It did not matter where they stayed. As for the fact that Liberty City was a new city whose lord was of unknown origins, except for the country, the three alliances, and the 8 sects that had been standing for a long time, the other forces were always rising and falling. It was also possible that a random big shot could establish a prosperous town or sect that would stand for decades without collapsing. They were almost worshipping their lady as if she were a goddess. Old Gus swallowed and couldn't help but look at Wei Mian. Boss, should we tell our lady the truth? Maybe she can really help us. Years of hatred, injustice, and expectation almost made it impossible for him to control his expression. Everybody fell silent. The roar immediately attracted everybody's attention. The noise was so noisy that even they could hear it from the top of the city tower. Chapter 3265. Wei Mian frowned. Let's go over and take a look. When they got closer, they found a figure blocking the entrance of the Six Stars Pagoda. Then, Wei Mian was shocked to find that those who wanted to enter the Six Stars Pagoda were blocked by a beam of faint blue light. Seeing these people, someone immediately shouted, "What the hell is going on? Didn't they say that as long as we paid enough crystals, we could enter this top-notch magic treasure to cultivate? But now we can't even enter the door. How is this possible?" Tai Tu pushed the crowd aside and shouted in a low, muffled voice, "I'd like to see which shameless guy dares to steal something from Liberty City." The moment he saw that person, Wei Mian was stunned for a moment. Even his breathing quickened. Tai Tu clenched his fists and glared at the teenager in front of him fiercely. "You're just in the mortal cultivation realm. How dare you be so arrogant? Have you grown hair? I think you're tired of living, aren't you?" The dimples on his face were partly visible. "I don't want to behave atrociously, but this Six Stars Pagoda belongs to my 6th senior sister, but it appeared in your place. Of course, I have to figure it out." The teenager showed a hint of hesitation on his face. "Huh?" Tai Tu was so angry that he almost laughed. "Kid, you're here to make fun of us, aren't you? Get out of the Six Stars Pagoda. Believe it or not, I'll beat you until you cry for your parents. How arrogant you are." Tai Tu immediately puffed up his beard and glared at him fiercely. His fists were clenched so hard that they made cracking sounds. "Then let me see if you're as powerful as you say." The onlookers retreated and looked at the young man with gloating expressions on their faces. And the teenager was obviously only at the peak of the mortal cultivation realm. This kid was dead meat. He shook his head, looking absent-minded and confused. It was as if he didn't want him to be hurt at all. Why could he control the Mrs. Six Stars Pagoda? Tai Tu cultivated the magical power of the Hard and Fierce series. Heh, how dare you act so arrogantly in Liberty City? Kid, is it too late for you to beg for mercy? Chapter 3266. The young man didn't speak. Instead, he curled his lips, closed his eyes, and spread his arms. A faint silver light was emitted from his fingertips. In the next moment, the surrounding rocks and trees, as well as the treasures and crystals piled up by the roadside, started to gather around the young man. The crowd was in an uproar. A puppet master. He's actually a puppet master among soul masters, creating puppets out of thin air. Isn't such a godly skill that only the elite elders of those large sects can do? This young man is quite capable. Even Tai-Tu looked surprised, and he couldn't help but stop what he was doing. Kid, you're quite capable, huh? He smashed the puppet in front of him with a punch. But soon, a dense horde of puppets surged forward. Tai-Tu started to panic. After a small puppet bit his left leg, he gritted his teeth, and a bloodthirsty ferocity burst out of his eyes. Diamond Leopard, come out! Tai-Tu pointed to the sky with one hand, and all the spiritual power in his body exploded. In the next moment, a golden leopard appeared beside him. Wow! Another round of intense discussion broke out. Soul Master. It's another Soul Master, and it's the most powerful summoner among Soul Masters. Look at the spiritual power surrounding that leopard. So powerful. It should be an elite-level summon at least, right? I didn't expect such a powerful summoner to exist in a small Liberty City. This young man is quite powerful, but I'm afraid he has no chance of winning against this summon. Roar! It was as if he was trying to prove what everyone said. The diamond leopard roared furiously and pounced at the young man. It opened its bloody mouth, and its sharp claws whistled through the air as it smashed the puppets jumping in the air into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the leopard was in front of the young man. A huge, ferocious beast and a weak young man. The contrast was so stark that everyone could almost imagine the tragic scene of blood splattering 3 feet in the next moment. Some soft-hearted people couldn't help but turn their heads. They couldn't bear to see this handsome young man being torn into pieces. Wei Mian's expression changed drastically, and he stepped forward to stop him. However, in the center of the storm, the young man under the leopard's bloody mouth curled his lips. TSK. Who doesn't have a summoned beast? In the next moment, a red bead floated out from behind him. A dazzling light bloomed. The fiery red giant bird flew into the sky and spread its wings, burning the sky red. Whoosh! He gently flapped his wings. The majestic leopard was immediately thrown to the ground. It let out a frightened whimper and couldn't get up for a long time. Everyone in front of Six Stars Pagoda who saw this scene was stunned. The bird in the sky was so beautiful, so dazzling. This was summoned by the young man who looked no more than 18 or 19 years old. A commander-grade summoned beast. Not only is he a puppeteer, he's also a summoner, and he actually summoned a commander divine beast. Oh my god, the entire floating island only had a few commander-summoned beasts? Who is this young man? After flipping the King Kong leopard, the fiery bird in the sky let out a long cry. It suddenly transformed into a beam of fiery light and swooped down towards Tai-Tu. Stop! Brat, you dare to hurt people. Have mercy. This time, even Wei Mian's expression changed, and he hurriedly rushed towards Tai-Tu. However, it was too late. Chapter 3267. The Firebird's speed was too fast and its attack power was too strong. They couldn't catch up at all. There was a loud bang. Tai-Tu's tower-like body was sent flying and slammed heavily into the wall. The eyes of Butcher and the rest instantly turned red. How dare you! I will kill you to avenge Tai-Tu. The long saber was unsheathed, and the pressure of a peak mysterious life stage suddenly spread out. Butcher's eyes were bloodshot as he slashed at the young man. Ding! However, before he could raise his knife, the Butcher staggered from the blow. The saber in his hand fell to the ground. Who is it? Who is bold enough to meddle in the business of Liberty City? Old Gu roared angrily and also took out his magic treasure. However, in the next moment, a familiar and sweet-sounding female voice rang out in everyone's ears. It's me. What do you want? Wei Mian, the Butcher, the Scholar, and even Tai-Tu, who had just climbed to his feet in a sorry state, stiffened. The expression on his face instantly turned into one of ecstasy. Indeed, very soon, a white figure descended from the sky and slowly landed in front of the Six Stars Pagoda. It was Jun Mayan. The real master of Liberty City had returned. Tai Tu's eyes reddened as he shouted in a hoarse voice, "Miss, this brat." His complaint was not yet finished. The boy who had just beaten him up pounces over and hugs Mayan. "Sixth senior sister. It was really sixth senior sister. I missed you so much." Mu Yen was also dumbfounded, although he thought he saw Luo Yu's figure from afar. But at this moment his heart was finally at ease. It was Luo Yu. It really was Luo Yu. Shouldn't he be in the cultivation world? Why would he come to the floating island? After staring blankly for a moment, Mu Yan's face suddenly blooms with a brilliant smile. She hugged Luo Yu back, her usually steady voice trembling with excitement. "Shao Qi, why are you here?" "Everyone from Liberty City." Tai Tu, whose face was swollen and bruised, was especially dumbfounded. "Wait a minute." He was wild with joy when he saw the young miss and was waiting for the young miss to uphold justice for them. But how did it turn into the scene of the young miss and this brat recognizing their kin? Who was this kid who could summon a commander divine beast? Inside the room, a refreshing and soothing incense was lit. Snacks such as melons, fruits, and pastries filled the table. As Luo Yu wolfed down her food, she didn't forget to complain to Mu Yen, sixth senior sister, "You don't know how miserable I was. The moment I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by a group of ferocious beasts. As far as the eye could see, it was a dense forest. I walked in there for 3 days and 3 nights, and when I finally got out, I walked into a black village. I was almost drugged and sold as a slave." The youth rambled on, enunciating each word clearly, but his mouth never stopped eating. Mu Yen looks at his childish appearance in amusement. "You said that third senior brother sent you to the floating island?" Luo Yu nodded and was about to eat another piece of cake. A small hand reached out and stopped his movements. Xiaobao kept a straight face and said in a serious tone, "Seventh martial uncle, eating too many snacks is bad for your stomach. You can't eat too much. The food will be ready soon. What if we can't eat in a while?" Luo Yu felt that she was so hungry that she could eat a cow. But this was the advice of such a lovely martial nephew who had not seen each other for a long time. Luo Yu decisively put down the cake in her hand, hugged Xiaobao, and kissed him on his white and tender little face. Okay, as long as it's our Xiaobao, martial uncle will listen." Chapter 3268. Xiaobao blushed and pushed him away, throwing himself into Mu Yan's arms. After a long time, he turned his head and said seriously, Even men are not allowed to touch each other. Seventh uncle, you can't kiss Xiaobao anymore. Xiaobao is different from fifth uncle and Uncle Ouyang." Ha 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 ha. Luo Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. How could their family's Xiaobao be so cute? He even knew the relationship between fifth brother and Ouyang Qing. Even Mu Yen couldn't help but tease the baby in her arms. She lowered her head and kissed him on the cheek. "Will Nyang Qin kiss me?" Xiaobao's little face became redder. The corners of his lips curled up, and after a while, he said in a low voice, "Yes," after teasing Xiaobao. Only then did Luo Yu briefly describe what had happened in the past few months. Turned out that after Mu Yen left, the remaining 6 people of the Xiao Yao sect swore to reach the tribulation stage within 3 months and fly to the floating island. However, how could it be easy to break through from the leaving body stage to the tribulation stage within 3 months? Otherwise, how could so many cultivators be stuck at this bottleneck for decades? Even if the talents of the Xiao Yao sect were extraordinary, even if they practiced hard day and night, they were still stuck at the peak of the leaving body stage, unable to advance. Luo Yu held her chin and said, "At that time we were really anxious. Although we knew that it was normal to be stuck at the peak of the leaving body stage for a few years, we had Sixth Sister by our side, all kinds of top elixirs and musician auxiliary skills to help us advance quickly. We really couldn't accept this gap for a while." Mu Yan's strength was far from her personal strength. But as long as the people around her gathered, because of her influence, their strength would rapidly improve. The Xiaoyao 6 were like this. The Nether Flame Army was like this. Even the Liangchen Army and the Qingcheng Army, which were not close to Mu Yan, were more or less helpful. Without Mu Yan, the Xiaoyao 6 were still the most talented people with the highest potential. But potential is only potential. Without Mu Yan's Shin musician skills to stimulate them, without Mu Yan's Shin musician skills, it would take a long time for this potential to really play a role and help them become powerful. When we think about how many years it will be before we can see 6th senior sister again, and that by then we will definitely be left far behind by you. We will no longer be able to fight side by side with you, and we will instead become your burden. We feel extremely depressed. Mu Yan stretched out her hand and slapped him heavily on the head. Don't talk nonsense. The Xiaoyao 7 sons will advance and retreat together. How could you all be a burden? Furthermore, I know your talent and hard work better than anyone else. I'm able to go further and faster than all of you, not because I'm stronger than all of you, but because I've had a fortuitous encounter. In Baixie's words, her life started from the moment she received the inheritance of the Shun musicians. Are the disciples of the Xiaoyao school really not as talented as her? That's not it. It's just that they don't have the heaven-defying golden finger like the Shun musicians. But was it really a good thing to have such a cheat? How glorious was the Kamikaze Gate in the past? Weren't they exterminated in the end? Luo Yu giggled and said, in Baixie's words, our Xiaoyao sect is a concentration camp for geniuses. But geniuses are also divided into different levels. If we are the heaven's favorites that only appear once in 100 years, then 6th senior sister, you are the evildoer that only appears once in 1,000 years. But fortunately, besides 6th senior sister, our Xiaoyao sect still has another evildoer. Chapter 3269. Ah no, there should be 3 including junior martial uncle. Hee hee. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. What did third brother do? Luo Yu blinks. I don't know what third brother did. He just drew a very strange painting, then burned the painting and buried the ashes into the ground in a circle. Then he let us enter the circle. Then I felt that I had entered a small world. This small world is a bit similar to the one where Instructor Mo trained us. We can only fight and kill in it, or we will suffer the pain and fear of death, and then the cycle starts again. I don't know how long I stayed in it, but I was tortured to the point of collapse. By the time I came to my senses, I had already broken through to the tribulation stage. Then the small world disappeared, and a transmission array appeared under my feet. When I opened my eyes, I was already on the floating island. Mu Yan says thoughtfully, so, the promotion time of the 7 of you, including the location of the final transmission to the floating island, may be different. Fortunately, 6th sister is smart. You actually named the city Liberty City. Hee hee, when I heard it, I guessed it had something to do with you, 6th sister. When I saw the 6 stars pagoda, I was even more sure. But before entering the small world, Big Brother repeatedly exhorted him to be careful and prudent on the floating island. His name must not be exposed. Moreover, he couldn't show the divine beast bays in front of others. That's why he accidentally fought with Tai Tu and the others. Luo Yu looks at Mu Yan with admiration and amazement. 6th sister, you've only been on the floating island for a few months, right? How on earth did you gather so many cultivators and troops, and even build Liberty City? Mu Yan smiles and briefly tells her what happened in the gravel hill. Hearing this, Luo Yu was stunned. He thought he was unlucky enough to fall into the deep mountains and old forests. He didn't expect that 6th sister would enter such a terrible place as the gravel hill. If it were someone else, no matter how strong he was, he would probably be trapped there for the rest of his life. Just then, the door is pushed open. A man in white walks into the room with a tray in his hand. The moment Xiao Bao saw this person, he immediately straightened his back, and his whole body and mind entered a state of preparation for battle. When Luo Yu raised her head, she saw a pair of icy blue eyes that were almost the same as Xiao Bao's. She almost blurted out, "Teacher Mo." That was close, he thought. The person in front of him only has a pair of eyes similar to Di Mingju and Xiao Bao. Her other facial features and face shape leaned towards feminine beauty, and even had a bit of evil charm. Who was this person? Li Weiran placed the fragrant dishes on the dining table and said gently, Mu Yan, there hasn't been much to eat in Kangwu City these few days. You must be starving, right? Mu Yan looked at him like he was an idiot. Li Weiran, did you hit your head somewhere? Or did you come up with some new poison to put in this food? Li Weiran frowned and said helplessly, Mu Yan, how many times do you want me to say it before you believe me? I just want to protect you. From now on, as long as I'm by your side, I won't let you suffer any harm. When he said the last sentence, the man in front of him leaned forward slightly. For the first time, Mu Yan's figure was reflected in those bottomless, icy blue eyes. He used the same cynical tone as before, but the fingers of the hand that was pressed on the edge of the table tightened, and the veins on the back of his hand slightly bulged. Chapter 3270. Mu Yan rolled her eyes and said unhappily, First, I won't believe you no matter how many times you say it. Second, there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. We're not related, so why did you suddenly go from finding trouble with me to protecting me? Don't tell me you want to pursue me again. I'm sorry, but my fiancé is 100 times better than you. I really don't like a pretty boy like you. Xiaobao nodded heavily. Li Weiran stared at her for a long time. Finally, he lowered his long lashes, covering all the emotions and light in his eyes. After a while, the atmosphere in the room made Mu Yan and Luo Yu feel like they were sitting on pins and needles. Only then did Li Weiran slowly take out the red silk and cover his eyes again. When that pair of icy blue eyes was covered, Li Weiran's entire temperament seemed to change. He said casually, Mu Yan, you're too sharp. All right, I'll tell you the truth. I want the core of Tianguang ruins, an item from Floating Light Island. If you can bring it to me, we'll call it even for me saving this little fellow. How about that? Mu Yan was startled. How did you know I can enter Floating Light Island? Li Weiran's gaze swept over Mu Yan and he smiled lightly. From the first time I saw you, I could feel the aura of the floating light jade key on you. It's just that this thing has already fused with your soul, so it's useless even if I snatch it. Moreover, my situation is special. I didn't expect that I wouldn't even be able to enter Tianguang ruins. I can only rely on you now if I want this treasure. Mu Yan frowned. So this is the reason why you stared at me from the beginning at the rocky hill. Li Weiran curled his thin lips. Of course. What other reason did Mu Yan think it would be? Hearing this, Mu Yan didn't get angry. Instead, she let out a long sigh. As long as he had a request. What she was most afraid of was not knowing his motive. It didn't matter if it was real or fake. Anyway, it was good enough that she could repay him for saving Xiaobao. She pondered for a moment and asked, Tell me what you want first. If I tell you, will Mu Yan give it to me immediately? Li Weiran said with a faint smile. If I'm not wrong, you can't go to Floating Light Island right now, right? Mu Yan, I'll tell you what I want the day you go to Floating Light Island. Before that, I can only stay by your side. After that, he doesn't wait for Mayan's response and has already left the room. After closing the door, Luo Yu and Mu Yan look at each other. Thinking of what Mu Yan had said about Li Weiran's actions, Luo Yu said worriedly, Is it really all right to have such a dangerous person by your side? Mu Yan, forget it, no matter what, he still saved Xiaobao. Since he has a favor to ask of me, he shouldn't harm us for the time being. Luo Yu thought about it and agreed. She immediately put aside her worries and happily began to eat. This Li Weiran has bad intentions, but the food he cooks is really delicious. He is not inferior to fifth senior brother at all. Mu Yan felt the same way and said with some resentment, Otherwise, why do you think I can't resist the temptation even though I know he's an enemy? In the space of the Tianmo Qin, Qi Huang stomped his feet in anger. Jun Mayan, Lan Luoyu, you two idiots. This brat obviously harbors ill intentions. Can't you see it? Mu Yan asked curiously, what intentions? And when did he ever have good intentions? Chapter 3271. Qi Huang blushes, grits her teeth, and doesn't speak. Idiot woman, can't you see the way he looks at you? It's not like he's looking at someone he can use. Instead, It's filled with aggression. Is he looking at his favorite prey? Outside the city lord's residence, the youth with red silk over his eyes raises his head, watching the bright moon in the sky as if it's dyed with blood. His thin lips gently hooks up, his smile evil and charming. June Mayan, I've never desired someone so much in my life, especially when this person was snatched from Di Mingju's hands. Suddenly, there's a slight heat at his waist. Li Weiran frowns, and somewhat impatiently pulls out a small mirror. At this time, the seemingly ordinary copper mirror is emitting a faint light, and a few bright red characters appear on the mirror's surface. Urgent matter, return quickly, Yu Yenran. Li Weiran curls his lips, puts the copper mirror back into his bosom, and leaves with a smile. A few days ago, Linglong Island, Shoshin Continent. Reporting to Miss, the herb for the magnificent quicksand, has been found. Hearing the voice coming from outside the house, Yu Yenran's expression suddenly shakes. Her eyes burst with a light of excitement and expectation. However, it's only for a moment, and it's replaced by unwillingness and grievance. Seeing Huang Shouchuan walk in and look at her worriedly, she bites her lips and says, "That herb? Who is it?" "Don't worry, Mississippi. Although there are very few herbmen left from ancient times, they're not completely non-existent," Huang Shouchuan says confidently. And because of some special reasons, those herbmen are either stranded in the Shoshin continent, or they're disciples of small, unranked sects in the Shoshin continent. They're said to be the son of heaven's will, but in fact, they rely on absorbing the luck of the people around them. Thus, the sects therein generally won't be too prosperous, and on the contrary, they'll face endless calamities. Because of these factors, this subordinate quickly found a herbman in a third-rate sect called Thunder Light Sect. This herbman is much purer than the one Leng Yuexia and the others found. As a herb, it will certainly make the effect of the magnificent quicksand near perfection. This subordinate has already ordered the people in the elixir room to start refining. Yu Yenran shows unbearable expression. To kill an innocent person for the sake of the magnificent quicksand. I feel a little uneasy, Huang Shouchuan sneered. To be able to become the medicinal catalyst for Miss to consume the medicinal pill is a blessing that he has cultivated for several lifetimes. He's just a disciple of a small sect. If he dies, then so be it. What's there to feel pity about? His gaze towards Yu Yenran was filled with pity and hidden adoration. Miss, it is precisely because you are too kind that you are bullied time and time again. Even a mere vixen from the lower worlds can act so arrogantly in front of you. Only then did Yu Yenran reveal a relieved smile. Then I'll have to trouble Big Brother Huang to watch over the refinement of the magnificent quicksand for me. As long as I change into June Mayan's appearance, perhaps Di Jun would be willing to look at me? Huang Shouchuan felt a pain in his heart and was about to speak. Suddenly, a figure stumbled into the hall from outside. Huang Shouchuan glared at him unhappily. Why are you so flustered? You don't have the slightest sense of propriety in front of Miss. Island Master, Deputy Island Master, have returned. Senior Yu, who went to Yenwu Continent to investigate, has returned. He suffered some injuries when passing through the spatial barrier passage, so he couldn't personally come over to greet the Island Master. He asked me to tell the Island Master that he had made an important discovery in Yenwu Continent. Yu Yenran abruptly stood up. Yu Jing has returned? Really? Where is he now? Quickly take me to find him. Chapter 3272. The damage caused by being torn apart by the space barrier is clearly very serious. Even though Yu Jing has already taken a healing elixir, his complexion is still deathly pale at this time, blood continuously spilling from the corners of his mouth. Seeing Yu Yenran, Yu Jing hurriedly gets up. Greetings, Miss Udage. Quickly lie down and don't move. You suffered such a serious injury because of Yenran. Yu Jing is overwhelmed by the favor and says emotionally, this subordinate is one of the 12 guards of Ling Long. For Miss, I should go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. Huang Shouchuan impatiently says, Yu Jing, what did you find out in the Yenwu continent? To have Miss personally come to see you in such a hurry? Yu Jing restrains his expression, looking at Yu Yenran and solemnly says, Miss, the June Mayan that you asked this subordinate to investigate, does she have a son? Yu Yenran's expression darkens, biting her lip as she nods. Why are you asking this? Huang Shouchuan angrily says, Miss has already seen that little bastard. The Emperor of the Polar Domain personally taught him, and even the people of the Polar Domain recognized him as their master. I don't know what method that Vixen used to actually make the Emperor allow such a mortal to give birth to his own bloodline. No, that's not right. Yu Jing excitedly straightens up, shouting, that child's father is not the Emperor. What did you say? Yu Yenran and Huang Shouchuan simultaneously turn pale with fright. Say it again. Cough, cough, cough. Yu Jing clutches his chest and coughs several times. But this time, Yu Yenran doesn't softly comfort or express her concern. Her face is full of excitement and anxiety. Even her voice rises a few times. Yudage, quickly say it. What did you investigate in the Yenwu continent? Cough, cough. That June Mayan's reputation in the Yenwu continent is not small, but very few people know the identity of the child by her side. It seems that from the time he appeared several years ago, this child has already been by her side, calling her Nyangqin. Because that June Mayan is too young, many people even thought that the child was adopted by her. This subordinate also investigated in many ways, and finally found some information in the home of June Mayan's adoptive father. Turns out that a few years ago, June Mayan was tainted by drugs. In the end, she got pregnant out of wedlock and gave birth to a little bastard. That child's father is not an emperor monarch at all. In fact, no one even knows who that child's father is. Yu Yenran clenched her fists tightly. Months of resentment, grievance, jealousy, and bitterness had all turned into a burning excitement at this moment. Quick, tell me exactly what you found. Yu Jing's breathing was hurried, his entire body in pain like it was on fire. But seeing Yu Yenran's anxious expression, he forced himself to be alert and began to report everything he had found out. 15 minutes later, Huang Shouchuan says in disbelief, You're saying that Di Jun already knew that Mayan's child was an illegitimate child with an unknown father? She doesn't even care that Mayan has already been defiled by another man? How is this possible? Panting heavily, Yu Jing said, Absolutely true. According to this subordinate's investigation, when Di Mingju and June Mayan first met, the child was already 4 years old. Before this, there was no news about Di Jun in the entire Yenwu continent. That's also true. Huang Shouchuan suddenly reacted. That little bastard is at least 5 or 6 years old. But if I remember correctly, 10 years ago, Di Jun was seriously injured because of a tribal riot at the border of the Polar Domain. After that, he went into seclusion in the Polar Domain's forbidden area for a very long time, only coming out again 5 years ago. Chapter 3273. Yu Yenran murmured, So, that child is not of the Emperor's bloodline? Instead, it was June Mayan and some unknown wild man? And the Celestial Emperor already knew about this. But why? Her eyes were suddenly filled with tears, and she clenched her fists tightly. Why did the Emperor turn a blind eye to me, who had waited for him for 1,000 years? Yet he was still clinging to a broken shoe. Why? Why? Yu Jing looked at Yu Yenran's sorrowful appearance and swallowed the words he was about to say. Di Jun doesn't just dislike this June Mayan. Even now, there are people who still take delight in talking about what he did for this Shin musician remnant in the Yenwu continent. They were called the Underworld Flame Emperor, and there were even people who wrote their love story into a folktale and sang it everywhere. Huang Shouchuan's heart ached as he supported the tottering Yu Yenran and said gently, Miss, don't cry. Wasn't that a good thing? Even if Di Jun really accepts that June Mayan is a broken flower and a withered willow, and is even willing to treat that little bastard as his own son, does his heart really not have a thorn in it? Yu Yenran raised her teary eyes and looked at Huang Shouchuan. Her eyes filled with hope. Huang Shouchuan continued, Miss, I am sure that this is good news. Perhaps, Miss, you don't even need to use the magnificent quicksand to make the Emperor dislike Mayan and change his mind towards you. What do you mean? Huang Shouchuan reveals a strange smile. Do you think that Di Jun has shown such leniency? Has he ever thought about who the man who defiled Mayan was? Who is the father of that little bastard? That's the high and mighty polar domain sovereign lord. What kind of woman couldn't he get in this world? What kind of treasure wasn't easily obtainable? Would he really be willing to let his things be tarnished by others? Yu Yen ran, but the current emperor clearly has no ill feelings towards that vixen and still dotes on her. Ah, that's because the man who once possessed Jun Mayan didn't appear. The imperial emperor could still ignore this matter and avoid it. But what if that little bastard's biological father appears in front of Mayan? Can Di Jun still treat Mayan well as before? Once he thought about how his woman had been defiled by someone else, and that even his child was someone else's flesh and blood. Would he really not feel disgusted? Yu Yen Ran's eyes lit up bit by bit. Huang Shouchuan continued, and in a fit of rage, the emperor might want to kill that man. But would Jun Mayan allow it? After all, he was her son's biological father. At that time, if Di Jun doesn't dislike Jun Mayan, then Jun Mayan will have a grudge against Di Jun. Can the two of them really return to how they were before? Every word that Huang Shouchuan said seemed to be knocking into Yu Yenran's heart. She was so excited that her body couldn't help but tremble, and she kept pacing around the room. However, she suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but frown. But Big Brother Yu also said that no one knows who the father of that little bastard is. Where are we going to find that man? Huang Shouchuan curled his lips and gently drew an arc on his eyes with his finger. Miss, you've also seen that little bastard. Don't you think that his eyes look like a person? The first image that appears in Yu Yenran's mind is Di Mingju holding that little boy. Two pairs of ice blue eyes are almost exactly the same. Even their expressions and temperament are inexplicably similar. Chapter 3274. No. Yu Yenran repeatedly shakes her head. During that time, Di Jun never left the Shoshin continent. He can't be the little bastard's father. Then who else would have eyes similar to the little bastard's? Suddenly, Yu Yenran's expression turns sluggish. Her lips slightly open, and she spits out three words. Li Weiran. Li Weiran. Yes, it's Li Weiran who has the same pair of icy blue eyes. 10 years ago, Yu Yenran accidentally picked up Li Weiran from the battlefield. At that time, his skin was festering, and the stench was unbearable. He couldn't even crawl and could only eat corpses to survive. At first, Yu Yenran was kind enough to save him because of those icy blue eyes that are similar to Di Mingju's. It's just that many years later, Li Weiran displayed his ability. It made Yu Yenran more and more unable to leave him, needing to use him, and he always used the red silk to cover his eyes. So much so that Yu Yenran gradually forgot that he had such a unique pair of blue eyes. Huang Shouchuan nods. Didn't Mayan not find the child's father? We can just give her one. And in this world, there's no better candidate than Li Weiran. Apart from the similar eyes, Li Weiran has been following Mayan all this time, never leaving her side. It's not impossible to say that there's a personal relationship between the two. If it's revealed that Li Weiran is Xiaobao's biological father, do you think Di Jun will still believe in that woman's innocence? Huang Shouchuan closes his eyes at the end, and the corner of his mouth curls up in a cold arc. Of course, Li Weiran will have to bear Di Jun's thunderous fury, and eventually die in his hands. Serves him right, and he has nothing to do with others. Yu Yenran's breathing becomes slightly hurried, and she can't help but look in the direction of Huaqing Palace. But will Weiran agree? Ah, his life was saved by you, and he's been obedient to you all these years. Maybe he's already deeply in love with you. As long as it's your order, he will certainly listen. Yu Yenran glares at Huang Shouchuan. Brother Huang, don't talk nonsense. I only treat Weiran as my younger brother. However, your method is indeed feasible. She takes a deep breath and finally grits her teeth. I'll immediately teleport and have Weiran come back. It didn't matter if he used magnificent quicksand or not. She hopes that the surviving Shun musician will be utterly disgraced and die without a burial place, so that he will never be able to seduce the emperor again. Yanwu Continent, a remote valley at the end of the fog forest. A tall figure slowly appeared at the entrance of the valley. He looked into the pitch-black depths of the valley with a profound gaze and let out a long breath. This person was defeating armies. Because of the closure of the spatial barrier, he was forced to stay in the Shoshin continent for 3 months. Until now, when the passage opens again, they can finally come to the Yenwu continent. Even in the Shoshin continent, defeating armies' cultivation could be considered top-notch. His temperament is eccentric and cold. Apart from his loyalty to Dimingju, he has no desire for anything else. He is fearless. But at this moment, when he looked at this valley that did not even have the slightest bit of spiritual power, his eyes revealed a bit of fear. Was he really going to return to this place? This place that even Junshang was powerless to do anything about, and was almost consigned to eternal damnation? If I'm trapped inside and can't send a message to Junshang. Defeating armies clenches his teeth and takes out a small bamboo tube from his bosom. He scoops up the soil under his feet and buries it inside. Soon after, he flies into the valley without hesitation. Chapter 3275. Are you saying that Liberty City is out of crystals? Listening to Wei Mian's report, Mu Yen can't help but frown with a headache. What did it mean to say that if you don't manage the household, you don't know the price of rice and firewood? She only knew about it when she was raising the Nether Flame Army. Now, he no longer needed to maintain the Nether Flame Army, and he had created a Liberty City for her. Compared to raising a city and a large army, raising a Nether Flame Army paled in comparison. Mu Yen really has a headache this time. She didn't know how to do business. The sky-floating island's Tianguang ruins wasn't like the cultivation continents, which was a trading ground. As long as she sells talismans and pills in this father's #1 shop, she will be able to earn a large sum of money. At this moment, Qi Huang was still making a ruckus beside her ear. Liberty City and the Broken Army aside, the most important thing right now is to build your natal sword. Even if you have crystal stones, don't waste them. Use them all to buy refining materials. If you run into that pretty boy Luo Yunxiao next time and your natal sword is still this shabby, I won't let you off. Mu Yen couldn't wait to throw a shoe at this brat's face. This guy casually said, make a natal sword. Moreover, he wanted 7 in one go. Do you know how terrifying the expenses are? Most of the rare materials in 7 Brilliance's refining list could not be purchased at all. He could only search for it in the Massacre Skylight ruins. As for the rest of the trash materials in Qi Huang's mouth, they were sold at an extremely high price on the floating islands market. Mu Yen finally knows why Qi Huang never let her forge a natal sword when she was in the Shoshin continent. Not to mention the cloud bone, the most important core material. Not a single one of the common materials on the list could be found in the cultivation world. Moreover, as a descendant of the Shin musician, it can be said that she is proficient in almost all kinds of magical powers. Combat, support, medical treatment, talismans, planting. All of them are included in the inheritance of the Shin musician. But he could only forge weapons. The inherited memories had clearly mentioned this. However, the skill did not show any signs of being unlocked. Even Qi Huang says that he has never seen any refining-related skills among the Shin musician skills. Even Bailey Luin, the founder of the Kamikaze Gate, was the same. Therefore, Mu Yen wants to forge a natal sword. Not only did he have to prepare a large amount of rare materials, he also needed to find the best blacksmith on this floating island. And this also meant that he would have to spend a lot of crystals on the tournament. Thinking of this, Mayan has a big headache. She looked at Zhou Zixuan and Rui Nyang. Do you have any suggestions? Zhou Zixuan bowed and said, if we want our Liberty City to prosper, we first need a sufficient flow of people. Although our 6 Stars Pagoda has attracted a lot of cultivators, most of them are rogue cultivators who have nothing to do with them and don't have high cultivation. Just them and the people who came out of the rubble can't support a town. Mu Yen pondered for a moment. Then she took out a stack of talismans from the space. First, find a nearby town and sell these talismans to help with the emergency. Zhou Zixuan takes the thick stack of talismans from Mu Yan's hand. his face revealing an expression of wanting to say something but hesitating. In the end, it was still Rui Nyang who cautiously said, "Miss, the spirit-mending talisman. These elementary universal talismans can't be sold for a good price on the floating island. Even a Tier 8 talisman is only worth 1 crystal stone." Mu Yen looks at them strangely. "Who told you that these are elementary universal talismans?" The so-called primary universal talisman was a saying on the floating island. It was those drawing methods that could be found everywhere, and they were simple talismans. Chapter 3276. Generally, it includes replenishing spirit talismans, speed talismans, 5 elements attack talismans, and so on. But because they are simple to draw and not very powerful, the price is very cheap. As for those high-level special talismans, their drawing methods are all in the hands of one of the 8 major sects, the infamily of Spirit Gathering City. Compared to the low price of primary talismans, the price of the talismans sold by the infamily is several times higher. Those rare talismans are also inflated to sky-high prices in all the markets. Hearing Mu Yan's words, Zhou Zixuan subconsciously looks down. This. What are these? A scream startles even Wei Mian and Butcher outside the door. Invisibility talisman, wind talisman, thunder talisman, diamond defense talisman. Aren't these talismans the infamily's secret arts? Miss, you can draw them too. Ma Quishan, who follows in, sees Zhou Zixuan's fuss and can't help but show a proud expression, although he is only a small team leader and can't compare to the strength of these generals. But in terms of the Miss's ability, these people are far behind him. How can the Miss only draw these talismans? She can also refine pills. His father has been trapped in Tianguang ruins for many years, and his body has long since withered and decayed. Although his father's confidant stole him out and took good care of him, he can no longer restore his peak strength. Unexpectedly, the Miss let his father take a pill, and the festering flesh began to heal. Those withered meridians also regained their vitality. Ma Quishan's heart itches, and he can't help but take a talisman from Zhou Zixuan's hand, saying excitedly, "The effect of the talismans drawn by Miss is much better than the ones sold by the infamily. Look at this diamond defense talisman. I only need to use this little spiritual power to make a protective cover that even a profound life realm cultivator can't easily break. And this wind talisman, let me tell you, the speed is comparable to," as he says this, he takes out a second talisman. Tai Tu suddenly comes to his senses and fiercely slaps his hand. "Get lost. These talismans are all used to sell for money. How can you waste them?" "Haha. Such a big stack of talismans. We can exchange them for a lot of crystal stones, and our military training expenses can last for a while." Wei Mian looks at Mu Yen with awe and sincerely praises. "In this world, is there anything that the Miss can't do?" Mu Yen sighed. "Of course there is. I'm in urgent need of a powerful armament refiner, and the things on this list." She threw out a piece of paper. "When you go to Lin City to buy things, also keep an eye out for me. If there's anything on this list, buy it for me." Zhou Zixuan took a look at the list and couldn't help but gasp. These things cost more money than their military expenses. He looks at Mayan with a bitter face. Just as he's about to speak, there's a sudden commotion outside the house. "City Lord, General Wei, bad news. The disciples of the Dark Palace of the Jade Sea City have blocked the entrance of Liberty City, demanding that we hand over the 6 Stars Tower, or they will demolish our entire city." Mu Yen, what kind of toy is this mysterious Yin Palace? The profound Yin Palace was naturally not a plaything. Instead, it was the 4th great power of Jade Sea City. They specialize in accepting talented puppeteers. In the Mystic Yin Palace, almost every elite disciple can control tens or even hundreds of puppets in battle, so the Mystic Yin Palace is also known as an army that isn't an army. Chapter 3277. It means that they can use their puppeteer skills to command an army of tens of thousands of puppets, while still maintaining their tyrannical strength. If the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace insist on picking on Liberty City, we will be in big trouble. Zhou Zixuan frowned and said in annoyance, Why would the Dark Moon Palace target Liberty City? Liberty City had just been established, and there were many things to be done. The army had not been trained yet. They did not have the strength to fight a real major force at all, or they would certainly suffer heavy losses. It's also because of the 6 Stars Tower. The person reporting carefully said, "These few days, there is a disciple of the Dark Moon Palace who has been spending crystal stones to cultivate in the 6 Stars Pagoda. At a critical moment, the crystal stones are not enough, so he wants to continue cultivating on credit." Zhou Zixuan asked, "Did you turn him down?" No, we did not. But the people who had been cut in line by him a few times were not happy and started a fight with the disciple of the Dark Moon Palace. We had no choice but to step in and take care of it because we saw that it was getting out of hand. However, the disciple of the Dark Moon Palace missed the epiphany and reached the bottleneck again. Unable to make a breakthrough, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. Also, someone was fanning the flames. Eventually, things got out of hand. Zhou Zixuan heaved a long sigh. Then he looked at Mu Yan in shame. "Miss, it was my incompetence that caused such a disaster." Mu Yan scratched her chin and said casually, "What is the 4th major force in the Blue Wave City? Is the Dark Moon Palace very rich?" Zhou Zixuan, "Huh? Probably. He was truly confused. Why did Miss ask if the Dark Moon Palace was rich? In the next moment, they saw their new master, the leader of Liberty City, the girl who was as beautiful as a goddess, slowly curl her lips into a brilliant smile. "It's good that you're rich. If you were a bunch of paupers, wouldn't your efforts be for naught?" Zhou Zixuan. While they were talking, they had reached the city gate. At this moment, the city wall of Liberty City was no longer short and shabby. Huge blue stones were stacked on top of each other, forming a tall ring-shaped barrier. On the city wall, there was a sentry post every 10 steps. It was heavily guarded. Outside the city wall, deep trenches had been dug, and crystals had been buried below to establish a defense array to protect the entire city. At this moment, in front of the open bronze gate, a group of indignant youths were controlling the puppets beside them in an attempt to break through the defensive formation. The array that Mayan has arranged is of course extremely exquisite. However, such a large-scale formation also had a very big flaw. That was burning crystal stones. Burning crystal stones like crazy. Liberty City, on the other hand, was extremely poor. Therefore, the group of people from the Dark Moon Palace controlled the puppets to attack for a while. The light surrounding the entire city flickered for a moment before finally disappearing. Haha! I was wondering how powerful this Liberty City was. So it's nothing more than this. Even the great city protecting array is so fragile. It can't even withstand a single blow. In my opinion, the senior martial brothers of the Mystic Moon Palace are still the best. With so many puppets attacking at the same time, their momentum shook the heavens. So what if it was a powerful formation? Wasn't it breached in the blink of an eye? The people of the Dark Moon Palace all wore blue and white Taoist robes. They all looked to be young male cultivators. At this moment, each and every one of them raised their chins with arrogant expressions. Beside them, there were many people wearing the uniforms of other sects who were constantly cheering and flattering them. Those are people from the 10,000 Swords Manor. Chapter 3278. Zhou Zixuan saw Mu Yan's curious eyes looking at this group of people. He curled his lips in disdain. They are a group of despicable people who seek nothing but profit and cling to the Dark Moon Palace to survive. They are best at sowing dissension in front of the big forces, luring them to destroy the rising small sects and families, so that they can profit from it. Who knows, they might have been the ones who stirred up trouble. Mu Yan looked at the shifty-eyed people and nodded in satisfaction. They seek nothing but profit. I suppose they are richer? Zhou Zixuan. Sensing Mu Yan's approach, the people of Liberty City who were ready to fight turned around and hurriedly bowed and knelt down. "Greetings, City Lord." After Mu Yan waved her hand to let them stand up, the scene immediately became noisy. "City Lord is here. So City Lord has been in the city these days. I thought City Lord didn't come back after going to the dark Parasol Desert. Haha. With City Lord here, there's nothing to be afraid of. My stall can't be left unattended. I'm going back first. Everyone's eyes were filled with worship and awe. The fear and nervousness he felt just now disappeared without a trace the moment he saw this young girl. Everyone in the city began to return to their positions and perform their duties. It was as if they believed from the bottom of their hearts that as long as their city lord was here, all the dangers could be averted. The leader of the Dark Palace was a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He looked no more than 27 or 28 years old. He had a long sword on his waist, and his posture was tall and straight. He was quarreling with the people of Liberty City angrily. Hearing them call him City Lord, he couldn't help but look over with a cold smile. "You are Liberty City's." His voice stopped abruptly. His eyes fell on Mu Yen, and he was completely dumbfounded. Behind Mu Yen, Ma Quishan moved 2 armchairs for her and Wei Mian like he knew them very well. He placed them one in front of the other in the back. "Miss General Wei, please take a seat." Mu Yen sat down casually. Then she looked at the young man who spoke just now. "Yes, I am the City Lord of Liberty City. If you have any opinions about our city, you can tell me." "I, 6 Stars Pagoda. No, I'm also cultivating." The young man's face was so red that it could drip water. He stammered for a long time and couldn't even say a complete sentence. His gaze roamed around, not daring to look at Mu Yen at all. The other people from Mystic Palace were also young male cultivators with thin skin. His performance was not much better than the leaders. Mu Yen waited for a long time, only to find that they could not even utter a complete sentence. Instead, she was amused by them. "You have come to my Liberty City aggressively. Don't you want an explanation? What? Now you don't want it?" It was your Liberty City that was unfair and biased towards the cultivators in your city. Can't we talk about it?" Looking at the people of the Dark Palace being captivated by Mayan one by one, they couldn't even say a proper sentence. The people of the 10,000 Swords Manor grew anxious. They had made up their mind to take advantage of the situation when the Mystic Moon Palace crushed Liberty City and reap the benefits. If the two sides did not fight, how could they fish in troubled waters? "We've had enough of your Liberty City over the past few days. We clearly paid so many spar, but we have to line up behind those lowly commoners, unable to use the 6 Stars Pagoda. It's fine that we can't use it, but you even want to hinder senior brother Beitong's cultivation. Now that his breakthrough and advancement have been delayed, can you afford it?" Chapter 3279. The shouts brought the people of the Dark Palace back to their senses. The young man with thick eyebrows, who was their leader, coughed lightly. He straightened his body and cupped his hands at Mu Yen. "I am Beitang Yi, a disciple of the leader of the Dark Palace. May I know who you are? But this is a matter between the Dark Palace and Liberty City. It has nothing to do with you. Let's invite the real master of Liberty City to come out and discuss it." Mu Yen slightly tilted her body, her posture lazy. She said with a faint smile, "I am the master of Liberty City. Believe it or not, get lost." "What an arrogant girl." A middle-aged man with a pointy mouth from the 10,000 Swords village sneered. "I wonder if your bones are as hard as your attitude?" He spoke very softly, and he did not show any emotion on his face. His right hand, however, silently clasped 3 dark red needles, and he instilled his spiritual energy into them. His fingertips shivered, and the needles flew towards Mu Yen. A malicious smile appeared on his face. The bone-dissolving needles would penetrate into the bones. Although they would not kill the victim, they would penetrate into the marrow and make the victim wish that they were dead. Later, the woman would roll and wail on the ground in pain. How lowly and ugly would she be? Humph! Liberty City wanted to make the Dark Palace let them go with a honey trap. That depended on whether the 10,000 Swords village agreed or not. Suddenly, he felt a slight pain on his neck, as if something had pierced into his skin. Subconsciously, he reached out his hand and touched it. His fingertips were wet. When he brought it to his eyes, he found that it was a tiny drop of blood. Did some bug bite him? Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt a bone-piercing pain in his limbs and bones. Ah, it hurts. It hurts. Help! Elder Liang, what happened? The people of the 10,000 Swords village hurried to support the middle-aged man, only to find that the bones all over his body were vaguely scarlet, as if they were burning. Why does it look like he was hit by the bone-dissolving needles? The people of the 10,000 Swords village, who had just seen Elder Liang shoot out the needles, looked at Mu Yen in horror. What on earth did you do? Mu Yen twirled a dark red needle with her fair fingers and chuckled. What do you think I did? Of course, it's to give him a taste of his own medicine. After speaking, she looked at Bai Tangyi, making trouble without reason, gathering people to besiege the city, plotting to murder. So this is how your profounding palace handles things? Bai Tangyi's face turned red as he fiercely glared at myriad sword manners people. Without my order, no one is allowed to make a move. But this slut injured Elder Liang. Shut up. Do you have the right to speak here? A hot-tempered young man beside Bai Tangyi sternly scolded. The people of the 10,000 Swords Manor were furious, but they did not dare to say anything. Bai Tangyi clears his throat and looks at Mayan with a complicated expression. Miss, are you really the city lord of Liberty City? Mu Yen. I don't want to say the same thing a third time. Bai Tangyi looked at the 6 Stars Pagoda. Does this cultivation treasure belong to Miss? So what if I am? Bai Tangyi and his fellow apprentices behind him looked at each other and said in a stern tone, I don't know where you got this 6 Stars Pagoda from, but a cultivation treasure of this grade is not something a little girl like you should have. An ordinary man's wealth is his ruin. You should have heard of this saying, right? Right now, the people gathered here are just some rogue cultivators who don't know what's good and what's not, so no one wants to snatch it. If one day the true effect of this 6 Stars Pagoda is known, do you think your Liberty City will still be able to survive? Chapter 3280. Mu Yen glanced at him. Then what do you want? Bai Tangyi puffed out his chest. Miss, name a price. Transfer this 6-star pagoda to my Dark Een Palace. Such a top-grade treasure can only be used in a big sect like my Dark Een Palace. The young man behind Bai Tangyi glanced at Wei Mian and the others and sneered. Look at your poor appearance. You must be short of money, right? How about it? Transfer the 6-star pagoda to us, or the whole Liberty City will submit to my Dark Een Palace. I guarantee that you country bumpkins will be able to live well in the future. Butcher and the rest were fuming with anger. Tai too, who had the worst temper, cursed without hesitation. Bullshit. Are you the country bumpkins? Do you know where I used to live? Before he could finish, Ruanyang pulled him and gave him a warning look. Mu Yen played with a cyan token casually and looked at Bai Tangyi and the others. So, why do you think that you are more qualified than our Liberty City to have the 6-star pagoda? Ha? Isn't your question nonsense? The people of Dark Een Palace laughed. Can a small shabby city that has just been built be mentioned in the same breath with my Dark Een Palace? My Dark Een Palace has taken a fancy to your cultivation magic treasure and is willing to pay crystals to buy it. We are giving you face. Don't be so shameless. Bai Tangyi stopped the person who spoke. His eyes looked at Mu Yen without blinking and said in a deep voice, If I'm not wrong, the mystery hidden in this 6-star pagoda should be far less than what it is showing now. Even if it is also a magic treasure used for cultivation, its assistance and guidance to soul masters is different from others. Ordinary cultivation magic treasures can't compare with it. Mu Yen nodded. It's not bad to be able to see this. Bai Tangyi thought of the mystery of the 6-star pagoda, and even his heart couldn't help beating faster. When I was cultivating in the 6-star pagoda, I could feel its special assistance to puppet masters. Because of this, I could break the bottleneck that I had been stuck in for many years. I'm sure that this 6-star pagoda was built for puppet masters, and it can only be used by my Dark Een Palace. If it's left in Liberty City and used by these ordinary cultivators who don't have any foundation as soul masters, it'll be a complete waste of God's gifts. Mayan looks at him with a smile that isn't a smile. I deeply admire you for your unrequited love. Unfortunately, you guessed wrong. Bai Tangyi's face suddenly flushed red. and he angrily said, "What did I say wrong?" Mu Yan ignored him and waved at a male cultivator in the crowd. "Are you a soul master?" The male cultivator was stunned for a long time before he said in a daze, "No, I'm a sword cultivator." Mayan chuckles and continues to ask, "How do you feel about cultivating in the Hex Star Pagoda? Does it benefit your sword Dao?" "Yes, of course." At the mention of the 6 Stars Pagoda, the male cultivator became excited. "My father used to say that my sword intent was too soft, but after entering the 6 Stars Pagoda a few times, my sword intent became extremely fierce." Mayan, do you think that this 6 Star Pagoda is specifically for puppet masters to cultivate? How is that possible? The male cultivator's excited voice suddenly rises. "This 6 Star Pagoda is clearly set up for us sword cultivators." Beitang Yi and the fellow apprentices behind him widen their eyes. "How? I also think that this 6 Star Pagoda is set up for us puppet masters." "That's right. Some of the training inside is even more useful than my master's guidance." Chapter 3281. Mayan sneers. Do you know why 6 Stars Pagoda is called 6 Stars? Because from the very beginning, this pagoda was aimed at nurturing 6 different types of combat cultivators. What? Against 6 types of cultivators? How can there be such a cultivation treasure in this world? Mu Yan stretched herself and stood up from the chair. Snapping her fingers, she said, "Since we've already talked about this topic, there's no better time than today. From today onwards, shall we begin the competition for the 6 Star list?" Wait a minute. Just now, they were still arguing about the ownership of 6 Stars Pagoda. Why did they suddenly start some ranking competition? Furthermore, what the hell was the 6 Star ranking? The 6 Star roll includes the 1000 average roll, Ganhua roll, void roll, sky-splitting roll, Hiyu roll, and fortune roll. The 1000 average list focuses on battle techniques, while the sky-splitter list focuses on spiritual power. The Ganhua roll tested one's support abilities. The void list tested one's divine sense, mental state, and willpower. The Hiyu list tested one's control skills. The fortune roll tests a cultivator's speed. As soon as she finished speaking, the token in her hand emitted a dazzling fluorescent light. He quickly flew up into the air. From the sky came a deep and old voice that was deep and mechanical. "The 6 Stars order is out. Following my master's orders, the 6 Stars list is opened." The light grew brighter and brighter, completely enveloping the entire 6 Stars Pagoda. However, the aged voice did not stop. It was like an ancient and heavy bell that rang in everyone's ears. Chenkuin's 6 Stars, ancient flowing sound. Chenjun, Ganhua, nothingness, splitter, Hiyu, and Fu Wang's 6 lists have now been opened. I hope that all the Shouja will strive to be the first, raise your cultivation, and not let down the world, not let down the common people. The voice slowly dissipated between heaven and earth. The 6 Star order floating in the air retracts its light and returns to Mu Yan's hand. Only then did Mu Yan look at the dumbfounded people of Dark Een Palace. "You want the 6 Stars Pagoda? Sure, as long as you become the first on the Hiyu list, I will sell the 6 Stars Pagoda to your Dark Een Palace. How about it?" Hiyu's list corresponded to control skills. It was practically tailor-made for soul master puppeteers. Everyone from the Dark Een Palace looked at the 6 Stars Pagoda with even more fervent gazes. At the same time, he was eager to try. Beitang Yi asked directly, "How do we fight for the first place of Hiyu list?" Mu Yan, enter the 6 Star Pagoda and choose the trial. There's already someone else on the list? If there was no one else, then as long as he had a good result, he would be able to become number 1. That was naturally impossible. Mayan smiles with surprise. This 6 Star Pagoda is something from the Shoujan continent. There are indeed many names on the list, but most of them are the results left behind by the cultivators of the Shoujan continent. Ha? Cultivation continent? Are you talking about the lower realm that doesn't even have immortal chi? Isn't it easy to surpass those people? Little girl, you really didn't lie to us? If we become the top of the Hiyu list, don't go back on your word. Okay? Mu Yan beamed and said, "Don't worry. There are so many people here listening. I am the city lord of Liberty City and also the owner of 6 Stars Pagoda. My words naturally count. Alright, then I'll take the first place and show you. Beitang-yi rubbed his palms together and entered the Hex Star Pagoda without any hesitation. The trial of the He-You list could not be said to be difficult, but it was not easy either. It targeted the cultivators' potential, not their current strength. Beitang-yi's status in Dark Een Palace was transcendent. To be accepted as a disciple by the sect master, his talent was naturally not ordinary. Chapter 3282. 1 second. Remember, LoveNet, providing you with wonderful reading. So, after only 1 hour, he successfully passed the checkpoint. The monsters in the checkpoint disappeared, and a list appeared in front of him. Beitang-yi looked up excitedly. It was densely packed with names, but he didn't know most of them. When he reached the top of the list, he finally saw his name. However, this made him suddenly open his eyes wide, revealing an incredulous expression. First place, Yi Liangchen. Second place, Beitang-yi. Third place, Su-yi. How could it be? Who is this Yi Liangchen? Why is his final score higher than mine? Beitang-yi gritted his teeth and rushed into the trial field again. Outside the 6-star tower, time passed little by little. But Beitang-yi and the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace who went in didn't come out. What's going on? Could it be that your Liberty City is up to something? The people of the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Villa were anxiously pacing back and forth. Even many people in Liberty City looked worried, looking at the direction of the 6-star tower from time to time. Only Mayan was leisurely drinking tea and eating pastries, as if she didn't care about what was happening in front of her. Miss, what if the people of the Dark Moon Palace really snatched the first place on the He-You list? Mayan. Then give it to them. Miss. The butcher and the others were anxious and wanted to say something. Luo Yu, who had slept enough, strolled over unhurriedly. She took a spirit fruit from the short table next to Mayan and started to eat it. While eating, she looked at the butcher and the others with a pair of quick-witted eyes. Don't worry about it. Do you know who is at the top of the 6-star list? Who? Is it Miss? By the way, if it's a record set by Miss, no one can break it. Looking at the confident expressions of the people of Liberty City, Luo Yu rolled her eyes and said with a smile, It's a pity that the first place on the 6-star list is not Mayan, but Yi Liangchen. What? Who is Yi Liangchen? Luo Yu said in all seriousness, Yi Liangchen, the great god Yi, is known as the list-slaughtering demon in the cultivation land. There is no list in the world that he can't be at the top of. No one has ever broken the record she created. As long as Yap Liangchen is involved in the ranking list, you have to be prepared to be dominated by her. Bang! Mu Yan knocked Luo Yu's head with an explosive pellet and glared at him. Stop talking nonsense. Luo Yu stuck out her tongue and laughed slyly. Since he had nothing better to do, he decided to play with them. Who asked these people to want to kill him back then? As expected, Butcher, Tai Tu and the rest were all stunned by Luo Yu's coaxing. He couldn't help but wonder who this Yi Liangchen was. Could it be that he was more powerful than their city lord? Only the corner of Ma Qian's mouth twitches as he stands behind Mu Yan. Wait a minute. If he remembered correctly, Mrs. name in Tianguang ruins was Yi Liangchen, right? At this moment, a few figures suddenly rushed out of the 6 Stars Pagoda angrily. At this time, Beitang-yi was no longer looking at Mu Yan with infatuation in his eyes, only anger of being fooled. City Lord Jun, are you fooling us? Why can't we win that Yi Liangchen no matter how hard we try? Mu Yan glanced at him calmly and curled her lips into a smile. If you can't win, it's naturally because you're not as skilled as him. Otherwise, what else could it be? Beitang-yi roared. Impossible. He's just a low-level cultivator from the cultivation continent. At most, he's only at the peak of the mortal cultivation realm. How could I not be able to defeat him? For mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 3283. Mu Yan sighs. Yi Liangchen isn't very good at talent related to the He-You list, so his points aren't high. There's still a lot of room for improvement. But you guys can't even get first place in the Hiyu list. This is enough to prove that the Dark Moon Palace isn't qualified to have a 6-star list. Isn't that right? Nonsense. Damn it. I think this list is fake. Right? Yeah, what Yi Liangqin, I've never heard of him. If you have the ability, send someone to compete with us in puppetry. If the Dark Moon Palace loses, we'll leave on the spot. Mu Yan bites off the last bit of the fruit and throws the core into the trash can. Then she claps her hands and stands up, a faint smile on her face. I was waiting for you to say that. Shao Qi, let these frogs at the bottom of the well see what a real puppeteer is. Luo Yu, who is squatting beside the chair, cleans his hands and slowly stands up. The youngster has fair skin and delicate features. When he smiles, there are 2 shallow dimples on his cheeks. His entire person carried a kind of clear and pure youthful aura that made people feel carefree and happy. But a clean youngster also represents weakness. Bei Tangyi frowns and says unhappily, Lord Jun, are you joking? Do you think that a kid who hasn't even grown his hair can beat us in puppetry? Whether it's appearance or age, Luo Yu isn't even 20 years old. He isn't like Mu Yan who has already formed his immortal bone. Normal people can't use their divine sense to check the age of their bones. That's why Bei Tangyi thinks that Mu Yan is playing with them. TSK, this little brother won't cry when it hurts, right? Ha ha ha. Senior E doesn't even need to do anything for this kind of rookie. We can control a puppet and beat him until he begs for mercy. The Dark Moon Palace disciples laugh. The 10,000 Swords Village disciples are gloating and fanning the flames. Senior Beitang, you should understand now, right? These Xiaoyao sect people are so arrogant and sinister. If you send out such an ignorant kid, even if you lose in the end, others will only say that you are bullying the weak. A disciple of the 10,000 Swords Village, who had a short beard and looked to be twice the age of Bei Tangyi, flatteringly called Bei Tangyi senior brother. If we don't teach them a lesson, they will think that the reputation of the Profounding Palace is something that they, this shabby little city, can casually trample on. Another member of the 10,000 Swords Manor looked at Mu Yan wretchedly and echoed, that woman looks young and her cultivation is not high. Who knows how she got the position of city lord? How can such a shameless slut be worthy of possessing a treasure like the 6 Stars Pagoda? Haha, if senior brother Beitang is really interested in her, you can bring her back as a concubine to play with. Bei Tangyi glared at the people from Myriad Swords sect. Don't talk nonsense. However, he did not say anything else. Instead, he stared coldly at Luo Yu and said, Brat, you'd better go down quickly. Get someone with real ability to come up. Luo Yu stretched her body and said slowly, As for me, I'm indeed the weakest in the Xiaoyao sect. If you want to get someone with more ability to fight, that's not a problem. But you still have to get rid of me, the weakest one, right? You can't even win against me, yet you still want to challenge my senior brother and sister. Haha. Where's your face? You! Bei Tangyi flew into a rage. Chapter 3284. But before he could speak, Luo Yu restrained his expression and cut him off. It's getting late. 6th senior sister and I are in a hurry to go back for dinner. Let's make the competition simple. As he spoke, he slowly opened his hands to the sides. Faint white light emitted from his palms. As long as any one of you can summon and control more puppets than me, you win. How about it? In the next moment, the 3rd layer of Mirror Domain was activated. Countless puppets that were already made appeared one after another in front of the crowd. 10, 20, 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000. In the end, the entire square was densely packed with all kinds of puppets. Some were humanoid, some were beast-shaped, some were as tall as mountains, and some were as small as ants. The scariest thing was that these puppets did not just stand there blankly. Instead, they moved quickly under the control of an invisible divine sense. Some flew into the air, some crawled under the feet of the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Village. Some were neatly arranged, ready to go. The angry and disdainful expressions of Bei Tangyi and the others froze on their faces. They could not believe their eyes as they looked at the puppets surrounding them. In their minds, there were only 4 words. This is impossible. And the disciples of the 10,000 Swords village were completely scared silly. When the densely packed puppets flew over, some people squatted on the ground with their hands over their heads, shivering. Some people screamed and wanted to escape, but ran into the murderous puppet army. A handsome young man in a blue robe smiled as he stood among the thousands of puppets. His hands were slightly open, and the dimples on his cheeks were faintly discernible. His black eyes were like obsidian, pure and sparkling. His expression was the same as before. Even the curve of his lips did not increase or decrease. However, at this moment, no one would think that this was just a weak and inexperienced young man. He was like a king that could naturally control puppets. In the blink of an eye, he had already laid out an inescapable net. Thousands of soldiers and horses, there was nowhere to run. Wei Mian had already stood up from his seat, staring blankly at the blue-clothed young man in the puppet army. His body unconsciously trembled, and his eyes faintly flashed with a bright light. Who was this young man? How could he activate mirror domain? Why does this scene seem so similar? So similar? Luo Yu looked at Bai Tang-yi and said with a smile, "Are these puppets enough?" Bai Tang-yi was flabbergasted. His lips were trembling, and he couldn't utter a single syllable for a long time. The other disciples of the Dark Yin Palace were all dumbfounded. Luo Yu tilted her head. "Isn't it enough? Then, let's continue." As soon as he finished speaking, the luster on his hand became even more dazzling. The surrounding rocks and trees began to gather around him. The originally lifeless object seemed to have been bestowed with a soul at this moment. They quickly combined and smelted until they became dozens of huge puppets. And this process only lasted for a few dozen breaths. "Enough! Enough! Don't continue." One of the profound Yin Palace's disciples behind Bai Tang-yi finally couldn't help but roar. His eyes were filled with awe and fear. Luo Yu looked at Bai Tang-yi and smiled. "Now it's your turn." Bai Tang-yi's eyes stared blankly, as if he was possessed. Chapter 3285. It wasn't until the junior brother behind him pushed him that he came back to his senses. The arrogant young man revealed an unwilling expression. But it was only for a moment before it turned into a helpless bitterness. He sighed and lowered his proud head. We, the Dark Moon Palace, admit defeat. May I know your name and where is your master? Are you a disciple of a great master from the Over-the-Wave Palace? The Over-the-Wave Palace? What's that? Luo Yu shook his head. I've never heard of it. My master is naturally the Xiaoyao sect. Who else could it be? As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the dense puppet army was put into his storage space. Luo Yu ignored Bai Tang-yi and returned to Mu Yan happily. "Sixth senior sister, how was my performance? I didn't embarrass you, did I?" Mu Yan gave him a spirit fruit. "Good performance. You deserve a reward." Just a spirit fruit? Although she was complaining, Luo Yu still accepted the fruit with a smile and chewed on it happily. At this moment, there was no more puppet army and mirror field. The blue-robed youth looked like a clean and innocent youth who knew nothing about the ways of the world. However, everyone present, whether it was the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace, the 10,000 Swords Manor, or the citizens of Xiaoyao City, were looking at the young man with awe and amazement. At this moment, they all looked at the young man with awe and amazement. Butcher and the others couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, a person who can be the junior brother of our miss can't be an ordinary person. However, this wasn't ordinary at all. It was a little too shocking. The Dark Moon Palace swore to provoke them, but now they suffered a crushing defeat without even fighting. At this moment, they couldn't help but feel embarrassed and dejected. Bai Tang-yi gritted his teeth and glanced at Mu Yan. In the end, he didn't say anything and waved his hand. "Let's go." The people of the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Manor hurriedly followed him. However, they hadn't walked a few steps. They heard a pleasant female voice behind them. "Wait a minute. Who said you can leave?" Beitang suddenly turned around with unconcealable anger in his eyes. We have already admitted defeat and left. What else do you want? The girl sitting in front of him had a lazy expression, and the corners of her mouth seemed to be curled up. The faint golden rays of light fell on her flawless white jade skin, making her look even more picturesque, absolutely stunning. But at this moment, no one would think that she was a gentle and harmless girl. Even her junior brother was so powerful. As the senior sister and the city lord of Liberty City, if she did not have some ability, how could she convince others? Do you think that Liberty City is a place where you can provoke as you please and leave after provoking us? Or is it the quality of the people of the Dark Een Palace? You only allow yourselves to stir up trouble, and when you can't handle it, you don't want to pay any price? Beitang's face turned red, and the anger in his eyes was about to burst out. However, he was unable to refute Mu Yan's words. Then what do you want? Mayan knocks her fingers on the back of the chair. Then, she sits up straight and reveals a seemingly pure smile. She twists her right index finger and thumb together and rubs them together. In this world, there is no problem that can't be solved with a lot of jingsher. Beitang was startled and only reacted after a long while. Then I wonder how many crystal stones City Lord Jun thinks we should compensate? Mayan glances at Zhou Zixuan. Zhou Zixuan immediately takes out a silver abacus and calculates on it for a while before he says loudly. Chapter 3286. 1 second. Remember, LoveNet, to provide you with exciting reading. The riot has led to the temporary closure of the 6 Stars Tower, which has reduced our income. Also, the reputation of Liberty City has been damaged, and the time of the city master has been delayed. In conclusion, the senior brothers of the Dark Moon Palace have to pay us 3,096,000 crystals. Since you are also customers of the Liberty Sect, we will count it as 3 million crystals. Hiss dash. The disciples of the Dark Een Palace sucked in a breath of cold air. 3 million crystals. Why don't you just rob someone? This is too much. Do you really think our Dark Een Palace is afraid of you? Senior brother Beitang. Let's go back and report to Master. Shut up. Beitang shouted. Haven't you guys lost enough face today? You don't have to worry about the crystal stones. I'll pay for them myself. Finished speaking, he strode over to Mu Yan, threw her a storage ring, and said coldly, the crystal stones and heaven and earth treasures inside add up to more than 3 million crystal stones. Can we go now? Mu Yan takes the storage ring and examines it. A bright smile immediately blossomed on his face. Even if Beitang was currently burning with rage, he was still dazzled by this beautiful smile that was even more dazzling than the blazing sun. In the next moment, a thin and somewhat wrinkled talisman was handed to him. No matter how you look at it, our 6-star pagoda is to blame for this matter. Caused you to fail in your breakthrough. Take this talisman as compensation, Beitang thought in his mind. Compensation? How could a mere talisman make up for the rare opportunity to make a breakthrough? However, the words that were about to come out of his mouth were completely forgotten by the faint smile in those peach blossom eyes. He took the talisman in a daze and returned to his fellow apprentices. Only when the junior brother beside him called out to him did he suddenly come back to his senses. Let's go, he said with some embarrassment. This time, no one stopped him. The mystic Een Palace disciples stepped onto their flying swords and sped away. The disciples of the 10,000 Swords village hurriedly followed. However, before they could fly into the air, a net descended from the sky and pulled all of them back from the sky. The people of the Dark Een Palace can leave after paying their debts, but who said you can leave as well? The people of the 10,000 Swords Manor were terrified and wanted to cry for help. However, he discovered that the disciples of the mystic Een Palace had already flown far away. They were shocked and angry. What do you want to do? This is a matter between Liberty City and the Dark Palace. What does it have to do with the 10,000 Swords village? What right do you have to keep us here? Mu Yan raised her eyebrows. Didn't you throw the bone-dissolving needle just now? That's right, so what if we lost it? It didn't hurt you, Did it? On the contrary, our elder Liang is in so much pain that he wishes he were dead. What else do you want? Mayan chuckles. I don't want anything. However, the motto of the Xiaoyao sect has always been that if people don't offend us, we won't offend them. If people offend us, we'll cut the weeds and destroy the roots. I love my sect, and I have never thought of going against the principles of my sect. What do you think we should do? The people of the Myriad Swords Manor were filled with unwillingness. But now the situation was stronger than they were. Even the disciples of the Dark Een Palace had been defeated. What else could they do? We will pay, okay? Wasn't it just 3 million crystals? We, the Myriad Swords Manor, are willing to concede defeat. I'm sorry, but you might have made a mistake. Mu Yan interrupts them with a smile. The people of Dark Een Palace really only need to compensate 3 million crystals. But your voices have polluted my ears, and your looks have polluted my eyes. The compensation needs to be 10 times more. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 3287. 10 times. That means 30 million crystals. Are you kidding me? 30 million crystals? Why don't you just rob a bank? Liberty City, I'm warning you. Don't cross the line. Do you really think that the 10,000 Swords sect is a pushover? We are willing to compensate you with 6 million crystals and a batch of spiritual medicines. You should be satisfied with that, right? I suggest that you stop while you're ahead. If you really piss us off, you will be known as a robber. Do you think that Liberty City will have a peaceful life after that? Mu Yan was still silent. Somebody in the crowd suddenly roared in grief and indignation. Isn't the 10,000 Swords sect loots other people's properties, murders and loots? What right do beasts like you have to criticize others? Mu Yan turned around. She saw that an unaffiliated cultivator who had joined Liberty City not long ago dashed out of the crowd and fell on his knees before her. City Master, my family was plotted against and robbed by the 10,000 Swords village. Eventually, my family was ruined. He even kidnapped my younger sister. She is a pitiful little girl who has never experienced the world. Who knows what kind of torture she has suffered now? City Master, my sect was set up by the 10,000 Swords village. 2. The 10,000 Swords village abducts handsome men and beautiful women from small families and sects, locks them up, and sells them for profit. The money that the 10,000 Swords village rakes in is not just 30 million, but even double. More and more people began to kneel down to seek redress for their grievances, while crying and complaining. Some of them were even begging in indignation that they would be willing to do their part if the 10,000 Swords village was attacked. Near Blue Wave City, the 10,000 Swords village had been dominating the market with the support of the Dark Moon Palace, the Clear Sky sect, and other major sections. Many unaffiliated cultivators were actually from the small families and sects that had been persecuted by the 10,000 Swords village. Before, they had been isolated and cowardly. They did not dare do anything even when they saw people from the 10,000 Swords village. But today, after witnessing the capability of Liberty City that even the Dark Moon Palace was wary of, and Luoyu, who could summon thousands of puppets, hope rose in the hearts of those people again. If they could take revenge and save their families, from then on, they would certainly be grateful to Liberty City and risk their lives for it. Mu Yan looked at Wei Mian and Zhou Zixuan. How could the two of them not understand what she meant? At this time, Zhou Zixuan was already prostrating himself in admiration towards Mu Yan. No wonder Miss would ask if the Mystic Een Palace and 10,000 Swords village were rich. It turned out that he had planned to take advantage of the situation from the very beginning. But thinking about it, this was really the fastest way to get crystals. With the 3 million crystals from the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords village, he would not be able to afford it. In the future, would Liberty City still have to worry about crystals? The Great City Protecting Array could be activated day and night. Also, after the 10,000 Swords village was destroyed, both those who were rescued and those who intended to avenge the 10,000 Swords village would certainly pledge their loyalty to Liberty City. Even the power of their army would rise to another level. This was killing 3 birds with 1 stone, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. The young miss was the young miss, and the city lord was the city lord. How could he compare to her in terms of foresight? Zhou Zixuan and Wei Mian happily went to deploy troops to attack 10,000 Swords Manor. Just like what Wei Guan had said before. Without the help of the Darkine Palace, a third-rate force like the 10,000 Swords Manor could be easily destroyed by the free unfettered army. Only one day had passed. The 50,000 troops of Liberty City returned with vast quantities of resources and the people who had been rescued from the 10,000 Swords Manor. Chapter 3288. 1 second remember. Love Net, providing you with wonderful reading. Miss, these are the crystals and treasures we brought back from the 10,000 Swords Manor. There are even a lot of the materials on the list you want. At least for the next 3 years, we don't have to worry about the expenses of Liberty City and the army. Zhou Zixuan passed a list to Mu Yan in high spirits. Mu Yan passed it to Luo Yu. Go with the scholar and General Wei to check the supplies. Then settle down the people that were rescued from the 10,000 Swords Manor. Luo Yu took the list and nodded, but then asked curiously, what about you? Sixth sister? Mayan, there's only half a month left before the Tianguang Ruins list is updated. Tianguang Ruins time? I have to go slaughter the list. Luo Yu. Only his sixth sister could say that slaughtering the list was as simple as chopping melons and vegetables. After a pause, Mayan said, Little Seven, when we come out of Tianguang Ruins, I have something to tell you about the past she saw in the memories of the eldest brother, about the identity of Wei Mian and the others, about the descendants of Master Shurqing, and about Luo Yu's identity and origin. What does sixth sister want to tell him? Why does she look so serious? While thinking, Luo Yu wobbled to the warehouse of the city lord's mansion. Under Zhou Zixuan's welcome, she checked the supplies and picked out the refining materials that Mayan wanted. Then she said, what about the people rescued from the 10,000 Swords Manor? Little Seven Gongzi, please come with me. The two came to a basement of the city lord's mansion. A simple medical station had been set up here. Hundreds of people were lying side by side on clean beds, and the maids of the city lord's mansion were using talismans and treating them. Those bastards from the 10,000 Swords Manor are really inhuman. Zhou Zixuan gritted his teeth. Those kidnapped boys and girls are to be sold to nobles with special hobbies. So they need to go through a long period of training. That training process is so cruel that it's unbearable to watch. Although the elixir given by Miss has the effect of reviving the dead, the quantity is too little. So we can only give them healing talismans with slightly less effect. Luo Yu nodded, frowning. She looked over and saw that everyone lying on the bed was covered with scars. Some people were unconscious, but they kept groaning. There were also some who stared at the ceiling with empty and numb gazes. Even though she had personally witnessed the hellish scene in Fusang City, Luo Yu was still disgusted by these insane beasts. Everyone from the 10,000 Swords village is dead? Of course not. Zhou Zixuan hurriedly said, Miss has already instructed us that although these sheep have been plucked bald, there might still be oil left after squeezing them a little. Wouldn't it be too easy for them to die so easily? Luo Yu burst out laughing. It was indeed the style of his sixth senior sister. Suddenly, the smile on his face froze, and his gaze fell on a spot not far away. There was a man leaning against the wall. He was wearing a blue robe and a white jade crown. He had long eyebrows and a pair of phoenix-like eyes. His temperament was gentle like jade. It was just that his face was sickly pale, and there were deep and shallow scars on his neck and exposed arms. However, he didn't seem to care about this little injury and weakness at all. His slender and thin fingers twirled a cup, and he was drinking leisurely. When he sensed someone approaching, the man turned around and gave Luo Yu a faint smile. Shao Qi. Long time no see. Third senior brother. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the Self-Love website. Chapter 3289. 1 second remember. Love Net, to provide you with exciting reading. Tianguang Ruins World of Slaughter announces that the first place on the slaughter list of the 35th round of the Guiyu period is Yi Liangchen with 98,000 points. Yi Liangchen, please come to the killing list to get the order of Guiyu 35 as soon as possible. Mu Yan tossed the token in her hand and said to Ma Quishan, you and your father will be responsible for the recruitment and management of the number 1 gang in the world. If you have any difficulties, you can tell me. Ma Quishan nodded and said with a smile, don't worry, Mississippi. Your reputation in Tianguang Ruins is getting better and better. Many people want to submit to you now that they know that the world's number 1 gang was created by you. Plus, the talisman you gave us is one of a kind. Everyone in the gang is trying to buy it. Mayan nods, preparing to leave Tianguang Ruins. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a faintly discernible shadow at the back of the slaughter list. Her heart skipped a beat, and her figure suddenly flashed as she rushed over. Little light. Mu Yan appears in front of the youngster in a flash. A hint of panic flashed in the eyes of the originally indifferent youth. What are you doing? Shouldn't I be asking you that? Mu Yan looked at him and said, why do you look like you've seen a ghost when you see me? Why are you running in such a hurry? Xiao Guang bit her lip, averting her gaze. Didn't I tell you not to appear in front of me? Mu Yan is so angry that she wants to laugh. Brat, it was obviously you who appeared in front of me, but you came to complain first. Little Light turned and left. But before he could take a few steps, he heard the girl's soft voice behind him. Little Light, don't be afraid. No matter who is controlling you, I will definitely return your freedom. Little Light's body suddenly stiffened. He clenched his fists tightly at his sides. His straight back was slightly hunched, and he was even trembling slightly. Mu Yan worriedly steps forward. She was about to put her hand on his shoulder to ask if he was okay. The youth's low and hoarse voice rang in her ears. Don't you blame me? I almost hurt you. Won't you hate me? Mayan stares blankly. Then she presses her fingers on his soft short hair and gently rubs the top of his head. Fool. Xiao Guang is so handsome and cute. How could I hate him? The youth's face immediately turned red. Before Mu Yan could react, he had already scuttled several meters away. He glared at her, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word for a long time. However, his eyes were filled with longing and vitality. Mu Yan is simply about to be melted by his tsundere and adorable appearance, and the smile on her lips becomes more and more playful. But before he could speak, a black and red stripe faintly appeared on the youth's face. Little Light gave a muffled groan, his expression changing greatly. Not bothering to say anything more to Mayan, he resolutely clenches his teeth and disappears. Little Light. Looking at the empty space in front of her, Mu Yan stops smiling and her face turns frosty. No matter who controlled Little Light and caused Tianguang Ruins to be in such a foul state, it was impossible for them to escape. She would never let this matter rest. However, why did she keep feeling that the Little Light she saw this time seemed to have a little more vitality than before? Was she imagining things? Mu Yan shook her head, took out the floating light jade key, and left the Tianguang Ruins. She didn't notice that the originally densely packed cracks on the jade key that was emitting light were gradually fading and decreasing. Half a day after Mu Yan left the Tianguang Ruins, a man wrapped from head to toe in a black robe appeared in the vicinity of Floating Light Island. In front of him was Little Light, glaring at him with a cold face. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 3290. Smack! Fury flashed across the black-robed man's eyes. The black token in his hand suddenly turned into a whip and lashed viciously at Little Light. Little Light gave a muffled grunt and curled up on the ground, moaning in pain. The black-robed man watched him suffer for a long while before snickering. He withdrew his hand, and the whip turned back into the token. I advise you to listen obediently and stop resisting. Otherwise, what awaits you will be 100 times more painful than now. With that, he turned to look at the door of Floating Light Island. He pressed the black token against the door and pushed. A dazzling light shone from the door. The black-robed man screamed and was sent flying hundreds of meters away, landing in the mud by the water's edge. He crawled up pathetically and roared in exasperation. Damn it! It's been corroded for so long. But why doesn't the door of Floating Light Island show any signs of loosening? If it can't be opened before the end of the Guiyu period, how can I explain it to the Imperial Preceptor? The black-robed man spat on the ground and patted his body. His dirty clothes were immediately replaced with brand new ones. He looked at Little Light, the black token in his hand glowing faintly. Has anything happened in Tianguang ruins recently? Why did the black flame token that the Imperial Preceptor gave me suddenly light up when I was outside? Little Light's body curled up tightly and trembled non-stop, not making a sound for a long while. The black-robed man kicked him hard. I'm asking you a question. Did you hear me? What happened in Tianguang ruins recently? Did anyone get close to Floating Light Island? No. After a long while, Little Light finally managed to spit out 2 words in a hoarse voice. The black-robed man kicked him again. You dog, you're not lying to me, are you? That shouldn't be possible. Under the control of the black flame token, this dog can't lie even if he wants to. He muttered to himself and looked at Little Light in disgust. Scram. Then, he flew up into the sky and looked down at everything in Tianguang ruins. He watched the people below kill, struggle, and wail in pain for survival and freedom. The black-robed man's eyes revealed a carefree expression. It felt so good to be able to control the life and death of others. It was like a god looking at an ant. However, there were still not enough people in Tianguang ruins. That was why Floating Light Island's defenses had not been corroded. If he still couldn't succeed before the end of the Guiyu period, the black-robed man shuddered at the thought of that lofty supreme being expert. Suddenly, his line of sight shifted and fell on the carnage list. Yiliang-chun, was there such a person in the slaughter list before? However, this doubt only lasted for a moment before he tossed it to the back of his mind. The time ratio between the Massacre Skylight ruins and the outside world was 10-1. Over the years, it was unknown how many times the list had been changed. Some people had reached the top of the list and some had been pulled down. Some were glorified, while others were miserable to the end. But no matter what, no one would be able to achieve 12 consecutive rounds of first place. Nor could he achieve 12 consecutive rounds of first place. This was the common name of the agreement that many people in Tianguang ruins knew. Why do you ask? The corners of the black-robed man's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. That was because the Imperial Advisor and the Black Flame token did not allow it. Mayan had just walked out of Tianguang ruins when she saw Luo Yu excitedly throwing herself at her. 6th senior sister. Hurry. Come with me. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.